Welcome everyone to Dandelion Delphi Tutorials. Today we're going to start with the section text files and arrays. This is really for grade 11s and 12s, but in order for you to complete the program with us, you need to go to this website here and download the data from there. Before we start with text files and arrays, I'm going to show you how to create your own procedures. So go to the program in the folder called text files and arrays, and inside there's a folder called learner marks, and open the program. So you want to go to the top of the program where you see private, and you want to declare a procedure and name it set tab stops with a semicolon at the end. Now this here is called the signature of our procedure. Once you have done that, remember the semicolon at the end, do only this line. Then you're going to push Ctrl-Shift-C, and that opens the skeleton code for this procedure. You will see procedure begin and end. This is my own code that I've used to complete this procedure with. So procedures just perform a specific task for us. So this procedure is going to clear the rich edit and set up 3 tab stops for us, starting at 0, at 0.75, and then the second tab stop, tab 1, is on 150, and then the last one on 200. Now let's have a look at arrays. So we mostly make use of what is called parallel arrays. So we have array name, array surname, array mark, and array grade. And what is unique about our arrays is that they can hold more than one item or value at a time. So we will have in array name a whole bunch of names stored, and in array surname a whole bunch of surnames, and so on. Each item in the array will have a specific index. So here is an example of indexes starting at 1. So in array name 1 is the name Albi. In array surname 1 is Albi's surname Badat. And in array mark 1, we're going to have his mark of 71. And in array grade 1, we're going to have his grade, and he is in grade 8. Now we need to declare our arrays. Our arrays are mostly declared under private, but you can also declare them as local variables in your procedures. First of all, you need to list the name of the array. So in this case, I have 2 arrays here, array name and array surname, then a colon followed by array, and then square brackets. And in the square brackets here, I'm indicating the indexes. So in this instance, array name can hold 30 names as well as array surname. Inside of these square brackets, it's important to have ordinal values. Remember, ordinal values are either integers or chars. So this is an example of an array with an integer index, and below this here is an example of an array with char indexes. So this is an array called array grade 11 average, and I can store averages in the position A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. It's also possible, as in this example, to have indexes starting at a negative value. Just remember that 0 will be included as part of one of your indexes. Now, after the indexes comes of, and then we give our arrays a data type. The data type here at the end can be any data type that we usually use. And this data type refers to what is the data type of the values stored in these arrays. So these here, the indexes, are the position numbers, and here is the data type of what the values are stored in these arrays. So for name and surname, we've used string, averages is going to be real, and a counter is going to be an integer. And this is array pass, whether they've passed or not. This is Boolean, so true or false. And we can also store char data types in our array. The next thing I want you to do is go back to private and declare the following. There is an integer I count, And this is going to hold the value of how many items of my array I have filled. These 4 arrays are all declared as arrays with indexes 1 to 230, but we do not have to fill all 230 items in our arrays. And iCount is going to indicate to us how many of these items we have filled. The next is you are going to declare a signature for reading from this file. We want to read from a text file into an array, and we're going to call this procedure read from file. So you enter the code, remember the semicolon at the end, and then you push Ctrl-Shift-C. And this is where I'm going to explain further. You can see I've declared some variables here at the top. So I'm going to go back to my book to explain them to you. The variables here, this is T file. It has a data type text file, and that is to hold the text file as a variable while I'm running my program. Then we're going to use IPOS, the integer, to find the position of some characters, and S-line is reading values from my text file into an array. So what is a text file? The text file you will see in your program in the folder, and this one looks like this. So we're often given text files. They must be stored in the same folder as where the program is stored. And this one contains the name, then a hash, then the surname, then a hash, then the mark, then a hash, then the grade. Text files are very small files. Their file extension is .txt, and they can't hold any formatting like bold and italics and so on. So the first step in our procedure is we want to test if this file actually exists, because we don't want our program to crash if it does not. Make sure you spell your text file correctly and add the .txt. This here, the argument for file exists, needs to be in round brackets, and the argument needs to be of string data type. So file exists is returning for us a true if the file does exist in this folder, and a false if it does not. So what we're doing here is we're testing if the file does not exist. If it does not exist, we're going to display a message to the user to say the file does not exist, and then we will exit the procedure. The begin and end here is extremely important. Without the begin and end, if you wrote code that looks something like this, testing if the file exists, only show message is under the file exists, and your program will always exit at this point. So make sure that you have this begin and end, so it only will exit if the file does not exist. Now our next steps. We want to use assign file, it's a procedure, and you will see that all these functions and procedures that deal with text files always start with tfile. And we are going to link tfile, the variable declared as text file, to this text file stored on disk. The next step is to reset this text file. So this will open up the file ready for reading from it. We can also write to it, but we're going to read from this text file. And it places the cursor at the left top of this text file so that we make sure we read all of the data from the text file. This iCount was our global variable that we declared, and since we don't know how many items are or how many lines are in my text file, I'm going to use iCount to keep track of how many items in my array I have filled. In other words, how many lines were in my text file. Now we're going to use a while loop to read from this text file, and you'll see the while loop starts with while not end of file tfile. That means continue reading from this text file until I've reached the end of file marker. That's really just the end of the text file. I also want to make sure that my program doesn't crash and it doesn't go over 230 because I only have space for 230 items in my arrays. So therefore I have my counter to test that the counter is still less than 230. This while loop will always have a begin and an end. So the first line here is readlin or readline, and this is a procedure reading from tfile, the text file, and it's taking one line at a time, and it is placing it in my string S line. It also moves the cursor to the next line of the text file so that if my while loop executes again, it will read the second line from the text file. I now want to increase my counter because I've read one line from my text file. I suggest that you copy a line of the text from your text file and paste it as a comment here inside of your while loop so you can keep track of what you are doing. We want to separate the name, the surname, and the mark, and so on. So we'll start with the name, and we first want to find the position of the hash. So iParse is storing the position of the first hash that appears in S-line. S-line currently holds this value. Then I would like to copy from this text file, from this string, I want to copy the line from position 1 for iParse -1 characters. iParse will be in this line, it will hold the value of 5. So I'm copying out from 1 for 4 characters. So I'll be copying only out iris without the hash. Now I'm going to store this iris value inside of my array called array name, and I have to indicate where it must be stored. And I'm going to put in the square brackets, I'm going to put iCount, and currently iCount will be 1. Next time I'm looping, iCount will be 2, and so on. The next step is to delete everything, including the hash, so that what my line of code will start with is the surname. So I'm deleting the line from position 1 for 5 characters. So after this line of code, S line would look like this. And I'm now going to repeat the same code as above to find the surname and store the surname in array surname. I'm going to do the same thing then, deleting, and I'll be left with the mark and the grade, and I will be finding the position of the next hash, and I'm copying out the mark. The mark we want to store as an integer in array mark, so therefore I have to string to int what I'm copying out from S line, and then I delete. But now you will see there's no hash to find anymore. So for this last line, I don't need an iParse, I don't need a copy, and I don't need a delete. All I'm going to do is 11 is what's left in my line, and I'm just going to string to int S line, and I'm going to store it in array grade iCount. So this would be storing, at this point, it will be storing the 11 in array grade 1. And here is the end of my while loop. Now the last code for this procedure would be closing the text file. Make sure it's outside of your loop. And I want to close file, tfile, so that I remove it from the RAM. I would like to later on maybe read from it again, or maybe even write to the text file, and I need to close it in order to do that. Now in Form on Activate, you want to call the procedure read from file. It's a procedure, so therefore it's not part of another assignment statement like you would use square root or square. It just stands on its own with a semicolon at the end. This is it for today. Next time we will learn how to display our arrays. You can run your program, but you won't have any output, but at least you can sort out some syntax errors if you have any. Hope to see you soon.